Welcome everybody. So last time we talked about supply and demand zones was about a year ago. I left off the video specifically giving you only a few little tips here and there with the coloring aspect going into the next couple steps, steps 5 through 9, steps 5 through 10. Now, what I did the last couple months was we tested this heavily. Tested this with a couple people, 50 to 100 different individuals, and with that data, I was able to update stuff a little bit better. So rule number one, step number one, same steps. The only thing I'm adding here is zones are made with the rectangle tool. And then to ensure they're perfect, use the magnet tool. Then you have step number 2, 3, 4, and then we're left off with number 5. So let's get right into it, right? Step number 5 says when buying off the zones, stop losses automatically start at 10 cents minimum and then 20 cents maximum. What I'm referring to is the stock price, not the actual options price. You should never be looking at your options if you're trying to actually trade the trends. You're always going to make a mistake and always going to, do something you never meant to do. Emotions, right? So whenever you're creating these zones, take the magnet tool off. You want to just go to the midpoint of a zone, click the top of it, and that extra little range at the top and at the bottom is basically your perfect area to buy. If you want to buy calls, you buy below here and it yanks it right back up. If you want to buy puts, you buy it up here and it yanks it right back down below. Of course, you have times where it holds on top of the yellow and then holds below it. Now you have to figure out what the price action has been doing the last week or 2 weeks to kind of figure out how you should buy and sell off of a zone, right? So point blank, that's where you're buying and selling at that extra point at the top and at the bottom, or at the line and then at the bottom line. That's 4 different points. Step number 6 says add a midline to the zones. So you see how I had that little dotted line right there in the middle? Just make sure all your zones have that. Let's say if you created all your zones and you've never created a midline for it, how do you quickly go about creating a midline or adding this little midline to all of them? Watch this. Click while holding control on your keyboard. Just keep clicking all of them. And then what you'll start to figure out is that you can put them into either one group. Now I have a lot of zones, so I'm not going to do this all the way down. I'm just giving you an example. I would click all this, open my object tree. I would click the group icon, group it. After I group it, I would then click the whole group as a whole. You see how I just clicked that one right there? And what's going to happen is you're going to pop up with the screen right here where it says templates. And you just save it to the template. And as you're selecting all the different orange ones, you select the template that you saved where it has the midpoint, and it applies to everything. Because if I'm trying to change the midpoint, you know what you have to do? You have to click it, change this, go to the next midpoint, change it, and that's ridiculous. I'm not going to have you all do that. So that's the quick way to go about doing number 6 and number 5. Now, whenever you're buying and selling off of the zones, they're going to have colors to them, right? Purple, yellow, and orange. How do you go about color coding it? It's very simple, actually. It's the simplest thing in the world. Don't overcomplicate it. You see I have 2 different zones right here. Let me change both of them back to orange. And let's walk you through the whole process as if this has never happened before, right? This is the first time this is happening. SPY never went this high before. We're going to ignore everything after. And let's just say, boom. You have these zones over here. There's a certain color. You don't care about that. What happens is you go on top of it, right? You're holding right here. Because you're holding on top of this zone, and again, you've never hit this zone any other time before. You see how you're holding 5, 6, 10 days after, almost perfectly on top? That is absolutely phenomenal. That right there, instantly golden. So that is basically the simplest reason as to why I turn something gold. I wait for the zone to be created one day, and then I allow it to hold on top of it another day. Now, just to get into it, just so you all can tell I'm following the rules, right? Look at that. That's a green, then red, red, red scenario. You put the box around just the green candle, top of the wick to the bottom of the wick. Just selecting, again, the green. The 3 red right after just confirm the fact that this is a supply and demand zone. And again, you see how you never touch it any other time besides over here. That's the reason why it's golden. Now for the purple zones, what do you notice the price action does? Creates a new zone, creates a new zone, creates a new zone, creates a new zone right here, a little baby one. I actually was trying to record this earlier, and I realized that I had missed one literally right there. Look at that. Green and then red, red, red. A little sneaky one. And, okay, so what happens? More zones, more zones, more zones, more zones, and now you got 5, 6 zones. Once you get the idea or the concept of you selling off from the top, this right here, instinctively in my mind and in my brain, I'm recalling the fact that you're probably going to have a supply and demand zone up here. Because if you're falling $3 to $5 from an area, I mean, just look at this. 600 straight down to 597. That's about $4. That's a really good drop. Why does it drop? What was the last zone it touched before it dropped? Again, what was the last zone it touched before it had dropped? Not the most recent zone, but the last one that it had touched, and then it dropped. This was the last one to the top. It then dropped to the floor. You hit the midpoint of whatever the range is in between these kind of sets of lines here, and then you ran right back up to the top again. Because you fell from it this third day, this was the day that actually confirmed to me personally that this was purple. Every other day was kind of weird. I didn't want it to be purple because of that. So I waited for this day right here for it to hit it and then sell off. And then that became purple. So basically what I'm saying is you have a situation where you're going to be missing 5, 6, 7 days of moves where you're not supposed to be trading. Listen, if you're trading during these moments, you're doing something improper and you're not supposed to be doing that. Once a week, twice a week is all you need to trade with, because as you can see, look at this. Puts from right up here to right down here, if you're patient, that's at least 50% of your account. Especially off of 0 day, at least 100 to 200%. And why is this golden down here? I had it golden before, but I turned it back to orange. But why was this golden down here? It was just simply because the next day after you initially created the zone, because whenever you create a zone that same day, you can't turn it to a different color. So because the next day you held on top of it, this zone now became golden. While you have the purple at the top because of the third day over here. Third day also confirms golden, right? Hits the bottom, runs right back up to the top. So let's say you miss all of this price action, right? Screw it. You missed everything. What happened over here? You bought calls at the bottom here during the live. We were actually live streaming this day on YouTube. And we sold out right here at the top. Bought puts at the top. Fell right back down to the gold. Let's just say you bought calls for the gold down here. What do you notice happens, right? Falls down on top of your head. You're down 40%, 20%. Runs right back up. Now you're up. The second you're up, please start putting your stop losses, because sometimes this happens where that same day it doesn't want to bounce upwards. It might do it a few days later. And if this was one of those scenarios, that's why I always tell you all to buy one contract at a time, because one contract could still turn into $500-$600 the second it's above this area. For instance, just look at the thumbnail of the video. One of those contracts, every single time, as long as you properly time it, will become 300 to 500%. Of course, probably 100%, 200%, but you can get that 300 to 500% every 2 days, every day, potentially, depending on the price action. Now, in terms of what I want you all to notice, you fall out the sky, you fall into these other zones, and then what happens when you run right back into the zone? That's the most important. Does this actually work? You buy calls, let's just say at the top here. The next day it runs on top of the purple. You sell out the calls. You buy the puts here, falls right back down to the gold. Does it touch it? Not necessarily, but we still sold it this day. You buy the calls again. It runs back up. You sell out, let's say the same day. The next day, you notice it's at the purple. You buy the puts. It's going against you. You sell out the puts. You buy the calls. You make some money going up. The next day, you wait. Once it passes below the purple, you buy the puts going down. You sell at the second you see it start to wick right back up, because again, you bought from the purple, so you're going to be up regardless anywhere around here. The next day, you hold on top of the purple, and it is until you make another zone, and then you hold on top of it, where we could just continue to play the calls. And then, yeah, we could just hold these calls until you just make that new high where you start to fall from the sky, where we then start to turn into purple and gold again, and it starts to be this ever so repeating cycle of us just having unlimited entries, really. And you scroll to the right side, and then of course in between the zones you can create a half point and then a quarter point, and that's what we did to the right. and we stop using the other smaller zones. So maybe we can actually upgrade this to look like this, you know? That's my thought, at least. We're going to test it, we're going to see. And that's all for today's video, everybody.